Hello and welcome to my channel today, Boo Snakes and More, also known as Boo's Exotics on TikTok and Facebook. Today we're going to be talking about the DC Universe, so please like this video and subscribe to the channel. The DC Universe, DCU, is an American media franchise and shared universe based on characters from DC Comics publications. It was created by James Gunn and Peter Safran, co-chairman and co-CEOs of DC Studios. The DCU is a soft reboot of a previous franchise, the DC Extended Universe, DCEU, retaining select cast members and narrative elements, but disregarding others. In contrast to the previous state of DC Comics adaptations, the DCU features a unified continuity and story across live-action films and television, animation, and video games. Concurrent DC adaptations that do not fit this continuality are labeled DC Elseworlds. After Discovery Inc. and Warner Media merged to become Warner Bros. Discovery, WBD CEO David Lasvin revealed a plan to retrovise the DC brand, following the poor recognition of the DCEU. Gunn and Safran were hired to lead the newly formed DC Studios in November 2022, after working on several DCEU projects, including the film The Suicide Squad 2021 and its spin-off series Peacemaker 2022 to 2025. The pair spent several months with a group of writers developing the overreaching story for a new DC continuity that features a mix of popular and obscure DC characters. Some DCEU projects in development were abandoned in favor of new takes, while others, including Peacemaker, continued within the new franchise. Certain DCEU actors reprised their roles in the DCU, with others recast. Gunn and Safran wanted to focus on storytelling needs rather than forcing creators to rush their projects to meet specific release dates. The story of the DCU is divided into chapters. The first chapter, Gods and Monsters, begins with the first season of the animated series Creature Commandos, released in 2024. Gunn and Safran consider the chapter's first film, Superman 2025, to be the true beginning of the DCU. Background: the DC Extended Universe. By late 2012, Warner Bros. Pictures was deemed to be lagging behind rival company Marvel Studios and their shared universe of superheroes, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Warner Bros. Began planning for Man of Steel 2013 based on the DC Comics character Superman to start their own shared universe, which became known as the DC Extended Universe, DCEU. They announced a full slate of DC films in October 2014. Man of Steel director Zack Snyder, Justice 2020 was set to return for Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice 2016 and Justice League 2017, with spin-off films planned for the Justice League members and other DC characters. The history of DC is pretty messed up. There's the Arrowverse, there's the DCEU, which then split and became the Just Water Justice League at one point, became the Snyderverse at the other point. There was Superman and Lois. There's the Reedsverse. We came in and did the Suicide Squad, and that became Peacemaker. And all of a sudden, Batmite is a real guy. No one was minding the mint. They were just giving away IP like they were party favors to any creators that claimed that smiled at them. Batman vs. Superman did not meet Warner Bros. Box office expectations and received negative responses from fans and critics. Warner Bros. Felt they could no longer give Snyder the long leash he had on Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, and reorganized future DC projects under the new DC Films division. Executive John Berg and comic book writer Geoff Johns were set to run DC Films and wanted to make Justice League more optimistic and hopeful. When the studio was not satisfied with their efforts, Joss Whedon was hired to write reshoots for the film. Snyder left the film after the death of his daughter in March 2017, and Whedon completed the film with significant changes. Justice League was another critical and commercial disappointment for Warner Bros., and the studio was again rethinking its approach to DC in late 2017. Following the film's failure, Warner Bros. Met with Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige to discuss if he would lead DC. Feige apparently entertained the idea, but the talks rapidly fizzled. Berg and Jones left DC Films, and a planned Batman spin-off film was reworked into director Matt Reeves' The Batman 2022, a film separate from the DCEU. Warner Bros. Intended for future DCEU films to be more standalone than their previous interconnected plan. Walter Hamada was appointed the new president of DC Films in January 2018. That October, James Gunn was hired to write and direct The Suicide Squad 2021, a standalone sequel to the earlier DCEU film Suicide Squad 2016, which retained some cast members but otherwise told its own story. He worked with producer Peter Safran, who also produced the DCEU films Aquaman 2018 and Shazam 2019. In May 2020, Warner Bros. And Snyder announced that his original vision for Justice League would be released on the streaming service HBO Max as Zack Snyder's Justice League 2021. By the end of 2020, Hamada was planning spin-off DCEU television series for HBO Max, including Gunn's The Suicide Squad spin-off, Peacemaker 2022 to 2025. At that point, there were around 25 other live-action and animated DC-based series in addition to the various film projects. Hamada planned to connect all of these using the multiverse, which was introduced in The Flash 2023. Warner Bros. Discovery. In April 2022, Discovery Inc. and Warner Bros. Parent company Warner Media merged to become Warner Bros. Discovery, WBD, led by President and CEO David Zaslav. The new company was expected to restructure DC Entertainment so the film, television, and video game divisions of the company could be aligned. Even before the merger was complete, Zaslav began meeting with candidates to take over DC, including film executive Emma Watts, with the hope of finding an equivalent to Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige. Despite some recent success with DC films and series, Zaslav and WBD felt DC lacked a coherent creative and broad strategy and were underusing key characters such as Superman. Hamada was still contracted until 2013 and his supporters felt Zelsher was not giving him enough credit for his DC plans and successes. In June, Lashley announced that DC Films would be separated from Warner Bros. Within the WBD structure, but would be overseen by Warner Bros. Film chairs Michael D. Larricker and Pamela Audery until a new DC head was appointed. At the start of August, WBD decided not to release the DCEU film Batgirl on HBO Max or theatrically, stating that it simply did not work and went against Lashley's mandate to make DC films big theatrical event films. Soon after, Lashley said he wanted a new 10-year plan for DC Films, and he had enlisted former Walt Disney Studios and Warner Bros. Executive Alan F. Horn as a consultant to help find a new leader for DC. Hamada was reportedly upset by the cancellation of Batgirl and tried to leave DC Films, but was convinced by DeLuca and Aubrey to stay through the release of Black Adam in October 2022. Around that time, Henry Cavill reprised his role as Superman from Man of Steel for a cameo appearance in Black Adam. This was against Hamada's wishes and was approved by DeLuca and Aubrey. When they were approached directly by Black Adam star Dwayne Johnson, Johnson began promoting the idea of a Black Adam vs. Superman film co-starring Cavill in the future, and Warner Bros. Began pursuing a sequel to Man of Steel starring Cavill. At the end of August, producer Dan Lean emerged as a partial candidate for taking over DC, but extended talks weeks later, in part due to his concerns with the Batgirl cancellation. Todd Phillips, director of the standalone film Joker 2019, was also considered for the role, but remained focused on directing the sequel, Joker Philo Deluxe 2024. Development, DC Studios in initial development. James Gunn and Peter Safran were announced as the co-chairs and co-CEOs of the newly formed DC Studios at the end of October 2022 and was set to take over for Hamada on November 1st. It was considered a shocking and unpredicted decision to have a high-profile director like Gunn move into a top executive position at a film studio. Gunn was expected to focus on the creative side of the company, while Safran focused on the business and production side, and their deal was reportedly for 4 years. In addition to their new roles, Gunn and Safran were expected to continue directing and producing projects respectively, though these would be exclusively for WBD. They would report directly to Lashley and work closely with DeLuca and Aubrey. A week after starting their new roles, the pair said they had began working with a group of writers to develop an 8 to 10-year plan for the new DC Universe, DCU. Lashley said they had began work on a Bible for future DC projects that would be finished soon. He also said the new plan would imitate Marvel's model of having a single unified approach to each character, specifically highlighting new approaches to Batman and Superman. By mid-November, Gunn had already began writing the script for a new DCU film, while Safran focused on fixing the DCEU film Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom 2023. At the time of Gunn and Safran's hiring, Reeves and Antonio Campos were working on a series centered on Arkham Asylum for the DCU that was originally developed as a spin-off from the Batman, but it was no longer moving forward by July 2024. In early December, Gunn and Safran were finalizing their plans ahead of a meeting with Lashley. Patty Jenkins, was no longer developing a sequel to her DCEU films Wonder Woman 2017 and Wonder Woman 1984-2020. After being told by Gunn and Safran that such a film did not fit within their new plans, various rumors about the plans were circulating, including that the DCU would be a complete reboot of the DCEU that moved away from the actors cast by Snyder, that Matt Reeves, the Batman films would be integrated with the DCU, and that Aquaman actor Jason Momoa would be recast as the character Lobo. I said Lobo! These reveals and rumors led to concerns within the industry and among DC fans about the direction Gunn and Safran were taking the franchise, and Gunn put out a statement saying they were coming into a fictitious environment and there would be an unavoidable transition period as we moved into telling a cohesive story across film, TV, animation, and gaming. A week later, Gunn announced that they had a slate of projects ready to go and would provide more details in 2023. He was writing a new Superman film that would not star Caviar, and Ben Affleck was confirmed not to be reprising his DCEU Batman role. Moving forward, Gunn and Safran had discussions with Caviar and Affleck about returning to the DCU to portray a new character, and direct a project respectfully. Affleck later said he was not interested in directing a DCU project. Thank you for watching this video, and peace out till the next one.